we're running a bit late. And it's time to talk about money. So I'm Aude Vignelles. I'm the former founder, chief technology officer at the Australian Space Agency. Passionate about space. I've run my company for just over a year now, providing professional services on all space matters to industry, to governments all around the world. I really liked the panel before because it reminds us that space-based application can help life being better on Earth. And I was really interested in what Sue had to say, and I think there are some things we should be doing in Australia to show that there are solutions based from space to solve our problems. 33 years of career now in space, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's always about money. How much does it cost? How much do I need to raise to build what I want to do? How much should I sell it for? If I invest, how much will I have return? It's all about money. And I'm very looking forward to talk with Flavia because I've been with Flavia for quite a long time. And it's the first time we're going to talk about cash flow, debt, equity. It's always back to money. And it's very important to get the hang on that because that can be the success or failure of a company. So we are very lucky to have a very diverse panel, space startup, but also private VCs, government representative, and the National Reconstruction Fund. Very, very thankful for having a rep there. So I would like to welcome on the stage Flavia, Tata, Nadini, the CEO of Fleet, Ben, Cade, or should I say Cade, because I heard that it's the French way of calling you now, so please come on stage. CEO and founder of Myriota. We also have Joe Chaturvedi-Durant. I hope I did say that all right. Senior investor and venture partner of VP Funds. We have Omar Pimentel coming from all the way from the States, from the Defense Innovation Unit. I know you like coming here, and we love having you here. And last but not least, we have Reypert, who is the head of equities at the NRF. So thank you for welcoming the panel today. What I would propose to do is starting with an introduction, who you are, what is your organization doing, and maybe initial thoughts of space funds, why is it particular to raise or invest in space? So first thoughts, and I have quite a lot of questions, and I hope you do too, because it's not often that we have panel like that. So let's start with you, Flavia. I don't know if you want to come here and do it from there. You're cool.
I've got some slides, but got that? Yeah. So I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Fleet Space Technologies. Fleet Space Technologies is a startup based here in Adelaide with offices all around the world and a couple of hundred people, a little bit less, but too many people. Okay, so I'm a space engineer as background, founded Fleet 10 years ago. So Fleet is 10 years old in August. And we are still alive, okay? So that's what we're going to discuss here. So I want to just tell you a couple of slides about Fleet. Fleet started with the idea of building a constellation of satellites for telecommunications, for connecting sensors for industries. We went through a lot of application, and we settled into one particular one that got inspired by this photo. This is Buzz Aldrin on the moon in 1969, putting a seismic sensors on the moon to understand the subsurface of the moon. Seismic activities on the moon are pretty awesome, and they are, this is another analysis of seismic on Mars. So seismic movement under the subsurface has been quite used on the moon and on Mars to understand the subsurface and find there is water or no water. So that was quite inspiring for us. Because I'm a climate tech founder, and I really like to help industry, and I still like to help industry that work on very, very big problems. And the problems we settle in is actually using seismic waves and analysis similar to what they've done on the moon and Mars, but for Earth, to find critical minerals. So we have decided to dedicate our life to exploration of critical minerals, all the minerals that we use in the batteries for electric cars. There are $13 trillion USD worth of minerals that needs to be found to achieve net zero. That is a lot of minerals. And we need to really find them fast. Otherwise, we're not going to migrate away from hydrocarbon. That is what it interests me. So we got inspired a lot by explorations on other planets, and we brought these technologies on Earth. This is interesting for me. We need to find 300 mines more in the coming years to actually just supply Tesla. That is insane. So it's a big problem that people don't realize. I like big problems. So what Fleet does is that we build satellites dedicated to this problem, so dedicated to move data from the subsurface to the cloud. We build sensors on the ground, so ground sensors that send data to the cloud through the satellites. And then we use AI to build 3D images of the subsurface. Okay, so we can go down to 10, 20 kilometers and do images of the whole body of a mineral. So we use ground sensors, AI, and satellites. So space is an enabler for us. AI is an enabler for us, an enabler for finding minerals. Okay, I want to show you this very quickly. Maybe we go ahead with this because this is too nerdy. Fleet has, we have raised $250 million, so I'm good at raising money. We all know in Australia I'm good at doing this, but you know, the problem that we're trying to solve, I have to raise 10 times this. We are doing so well. Like, we're still alive 10 years in, so that probably is going to be a discussion for today. But we have deployed in 5 continents. Fleet is an honor. It's a beautiful company that is doing amazing things worldwide. So I am really keen to talk about this. This is Spider. So we are going back to the moon this year, to next year, to actually study the subsurface of the moon now with new technology. So going back to 1969, but with better technologies, and understand the dark side of the moon and if there is water there. So this is a little summary about us. Okay, thank you.
Just a quick one for you, Flavia. I was about to ask you how much did you raise? So you said 250 million since you were created. Can you talk about generating revenue? Can you share that?
So Fleet raised the first round of capital, what we call seed round, in 6 years ago. Okay, so the seed round was $5 million, and it looked like a lot of money to me. And from that moment, we have done a Series A, a Series B, a Series C, a Series D in December, in which we have raised $150 million. It's a lot of money. It took us a long time from the moment that early investors invested in us to the moment that we launched the product. This is deep tech, so we needed to build satellites, we needed to build the AI platform, we needed to build sensors. So more or less, we launched the product on the market and started having revenue 3 years ago. So there was 7 years of deep tech and 7 years of investors really trusting that something would come out of this. So it's quite amazing to have deep tech investors that believe in the process. When we started having revenue, it went really, really fast. So Fleet, probably from 0 to $100 million of revenue in 3 years, okay, 3-4 years. That is quite incredible for a startup.
Thank you very much. Ben, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aude. Okay, so hopefully we have a slide or two from Myriota.
If you can.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to talk very briefly actually about Myriota and talk a little bit then about funding a space business and just personal experiences. But before we start, we at Myriota use space as a medium to connect to the physical world for impact. And so our whole focus and what this really means is helping industry, government, academia to monitor, to respond to issues and changes in the field wherever they're happening in the world for a whole range of different types of use cases. And it's quite amazing, and it's amazing to see the progress at Fleet and a number of other companies that sort of founded all similar sort of time, 10 years or so ago. Today we're running the largest satellite constellation for satellite IoT-based connectivity, so sensor-based connectivity, more than 40 different satellites in low Earth orbit, in geostationary. We use our own satellites, we use partner satellites, and we put that all into a system which quite frankly, is extremely complicated. And we do that with about 80 people today. So as you said, there's an awful lot of things going on. What's amazing with Myriota is that you're building a constellation and a system from advanced microchips to advanced devices that go out into the field to advanced space-hardened radio communication payloads with AI to all of the network orchestration and management. And all of that is actually envisaged here, it is built here in Australia, and it is actually exported to the world. So that's an amazing step. And that would clearly not be possible without access to the right amount of capital at the right stages. 10 years ago, vehicles like the SA Venture Capital Fund did not exist. 10 years ago, in fact, a couple of years ago, the National Reconstruction Fund did not exist. And neither did 10 years ago Main Sequence Ventures. So a lot has changed during that time, and I think there's a number of pioneering companies that have helped make that change and access to capital in Australia a reality. Now, that was really the only slide I was going to talk about, although if we click to one more slide, or if I do it myself, what is really, yes, making money is important, okay, but fundamentally we set out to found Myriota and Dr. David Haley and Dr. Alex Grant to make an impact in the world, and today we're helping people with no electricity across Mexico actually get access to power. And that's revolutionizing lives, to monitoring glacial retreat and glacier health in the Chilean Andes, to here in Australia managing our groundwater. So definitely the impact of space technology here on Earth is something that I think is very core to many of us. But I wanted to talk more broadly about, beyond that, actually, what does it mean as a founder as you're starting out and you're looking to raise capital? So I would encourage you to sort of look outside in. The first thing is, when you're across the desk from a venture capitalist, they're going to be looking at, the first thing is market. Is there a market here? Are you talking about a market that exists, a tick, or the potential of a future market that you're going to be a pioneer in creating, right? That's a big risk. The second part then is, well, if the market does or does not exist, what about the industry risk? So what is your right to win? Do you have product market fit? And what sustainable differentiation do you have if you do get a placeholder in this market to actually grow forward and dominate? And then the third, and maybe the uncomfortable truth here, is that venture capitalist, especially venture capitalist firms based outside of Australia, are going to look at you and they're going to grade you as your ability to deliver on that vision, on deliver that business, not just you, but your team, and more broadly, to take their money and actually realize what you're promising. And okay, that is a hard reality, and that is part of the challenge that you need to get to start, but then to continue, because every time you get to a different funding round, at least in my experience, the target and the expectation gets higher and higher, and what you have to do is harder and harder. The other side from a personal perspective as well is, are you going to commit to this journey? Before I was an entrepreneur, I've been lucky enough, this is the third business to help scale and go global, 2 of which I founded. Before I did that, I actually helped set up a corporate venture capital firm inside a large NASDAQ deep tech business. And we did a lot of investments, and we came up with a rule of thumb, which was we wouldn't know if one of our investments in a company was going to be successful for between 7 and 10 years. And we typically invested at between seed and Series A, and although the numbers vary, that typically means between 18 months and 3 years in. So you're talking about a journey now, not to success, but to maybe de-risked or a high chance of succeeding, of somewhere between 9 and 13 years. So as you're starting out, are you ready for that journey? Are you ready to make the sacrifices from a family perspective, from a financial perspective? Because for sure, it is easier to make more money for 90% of those startups by just staying in a corporate job. Okay, and so that is something I just want to make sure, as you go into this world, it cannot just be financial that you're driving. You're driven for impact, you're driven for change, and hopefully, yes, at the end of that, you can get a great financial outcome, but that will not be the lived experience for 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs. That is just, unfortunately, the reality of the world. So that's really all I had to say on those key points, and I hand back to Aude.
Quick question, how much have you raised so far?
So we've raised over $100 million, so about $110 million. So about half of what Flavia is. So Flavia is obviously much better at raising capital.
And generating revenue as well?
Yes, so we generate revenue. I think but there is a sobering fact, right? The people that we are competing with today, we're the 5th largest satellite IoT connectivity provider. The companies that we are competing with have either raised billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars. And normally now what we're seeing is, because space is seen as a strategic frontier, especially in communications, that most of the governments backing those startups have put in hundreds of millions of US dollars. So we like to talk about 250 million and 110 million, but that's Australian, which is not worth as much as a US dollar, unfortunately.
Thank you, Ben, and I do echo your comments about are you ready for the journey and the commitments and the resilience you need to show. When I was at the agency, I was reviewing a proposal. I think I reviewed 500 in 6 years. People who are behind the idea for me was very important, and we often forget that. Who are the people behind it and their culture? So thank you for raising this and giving that advice. Next we have Joe.
I'm just going to do it from here. I'm not doing slides. But how cool are these stories? I think as a VC investor, a lot of us do this as a living to live vicariously through founder journey. So thank you for everything you guys do. This is very, very cool. I'd like to start off with acknowledging the lands on which we meet today and the connection to Cosmos and the historic knowledge of thousands of years that has informed what we understand about universe today and all the amazing thing that space has enabled for us. The other notable acknowledgement would be, as a kid who did not pursue a career in space because I thought I could not do math, only to a lot later in life realize I just learned differently and I am half decent at it. I'd love to acknowledge the efforts that organizations like SASIC, the space agency here in Australia, as well as the amazing rock stars at the Andy Thomas Space Foundation do to incorporate the knowledge base, the talent base that we need to be actually able to sustain amazing businesses like the ones we've just heard about. My name is Chaturvedi-Durant. I wear many hats, one of which most relevant for today is I'm a senior investor with VU Venture Partners. We are headquartered out of San Francisco. We are a global state, sector, and region agnostic portfolio. And that's kind of, when I look towards my fellow co-panelists today, sort of sets me apart quite a lot because they have either very specific mandates for their portfolios or their coverages or are building specific companies. I get to paint with broad brushes, which is extremely interesting. So we are stage, sector, and region agnostic. We invest from everywhere from pre-seed, meaning you have just an idea and a slide deck, to advanced stages. You are already in market and doing amazing things. We can invest in all different parts of the world, and we can invest across sectors. We've got about 100 portfolio companies at the moment, and very organically, about 20% of our portfolio is in space. We didn't set out for it to be the case. We just loved space businesses, and we just ended up here. If we include defense and dual-use technologies, that's sort of a third of our portfolio. So, which means that we've seen amazing exits, we've seen up rounds, we've seen down rounds, we've seen flat rounds, we've seen zombies, and we've seen fallen soldiers, which makes us very emotionally well-adjusted investors. Some of those rides are extremely, extremely humbling. One very interesting one that I'm starting to get really excited about is the position Australia has in space. We've got one of our US-based portfolio companies now doing work here in South Australia. They're called Aude Space. They manufacture pharmaceuticals in microgravity and come back to Kaniba here, which is amazing, underscoring message of the role and the strategic importance that Australia has in the overall space economy. I did promise you that I was going to paint with broad brushes, so I'm going to start now. I wanted to talk about the 3 key headwinds that space businesses face when they're trying to raise capital. The first being, space has a marketing problem, and we've got to sort of sit with that thought. And it's not unique to Australia. I've had this exact same conversation with the one space FFRDC that's funded in the US. They also recognize the exact same problem that space has. We still position space as enabling technology. It's almost like saying photosynthesis is an enabling process. At some point, this becomes critical. Life as we know today does not exist if we don't invest in space. And again, saying that to the folks in this room is like preaching to the converted. I think we need to sort of be taking this message outside and communicating it and marketing it in a slightly different way, to unlocking some of that capital that essentially sees B2B SaaS as the easiest way, path to market. It's a very easy way to make returns. The other tailwind, headwinds, I would say, that space businesses face is something that Ben sort of touched on, is thinking about the business. So if you are a B2B SaaS founder, again, I'm just going to dog on B2B SaaS because it's just so easy to dog on. You are thinking about your ICP or your ideal customer profile from day one. We need that to happen with space businesses, right? As you build technology, think about what is the specific problem you're solving, who's going to pay for it, how are they going to pay for it, how do they buy it today, can you change something about the way they buy today? All of that good stuff becomes really, really important when you're having investor conversations, especially with generalists, right? So I think that's an important thing that founders have to obviously think about. The third headwind is, again, it's across sectors, but especially VC investors, we are running a business, and it is a brutal business as that. I've been in investment management for 17 years, which tells you about my pain tolerance a fair bit. Raising capital for a company is extremely hard, and you've heard that. Raising a fund is that on steroids. And there is a whole different portfolio gymnastics that has to happen every time we look at a new startup, right? So a lot of times, it's about how you fit within that portfolio that drives that decision making, not just what is the amazing tech that you're building. And sometimes that's really easy to sort of lose sight of. So those would be my broad brush comments to start with, Aude, and back to you.
Thank you very much. How to unlock the capital that is available. I have a question on that I hope we're going to have the opportunity to go through. Next, we have Omar. Over to you.
Is it afternoon yet? Oh, good morning, everybody. It is an honor to be back on stage. I had to reset my mind running from a different panel. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone, and fantastic openers from our fellow co-panelists. I feel extremely fortunate that I don't have to be in the business of raising money, because it is a hair puller. I try to empathize, because the Department of Defense, a testament of sending someone as young and as hip as me to an international space conference to talk about space funding, I hope is a testament to the way that we're beginning to think of things differently, right? And the way that the Department of Defense, particularly DIU, is approaching the problem in a unique way. So I think that funding space ventures is challenging and high risk, and that is no secret to any of us, and it has large capital requirements. Longer timelines than most investors traditionally prefer, as we just heard. And there's one thing in recent years that we have been able to demonstrate, and is that space startups can indeed offer compelling investment opportunities. And we see that from the recent raises announced from the companies that we have present today, and Varda, that is doing business in South Australia and recently announced a successful capital raise as well. And those are historic rounds, but I think it's important also. I'd like to bring a sort of a contrarian perspective to a lot of this as well. And I don't want to sugarcoat the way that we look at these things, and I appreciated how Jo also did the same in her remarks. There are tough lessons in the space business. Space, unique to a lot of different industries, is incredibly idealistic. And as the most probably idealistic person here in the crowd, I was inspired by Tsiolkovsky, by Star Wars, by Star Trek, and countless sci-fi dreams. But the hard truths that we need to come to grips with come through spectacular setbacks. And idealism alone isn't going to launch rockets or make money, and we need to be approaching things from a commercial business perspective. And high capital expenditure demands realism. And space being a super expensive business to be in, it's important that we have customers that are willing to pony up for the kind of businesses that we're seeing. And I am extremely, extremely impressed by what I've seen in my last year in Australia. My first time in Australia was last year, and since then, this is my 4th time back. And every time, and my colleague, Major General Olson, who has joined me today, can also agree with that. I think it's fair to say that Australia, and particularly the space industry, is open for business. And we've seen it with the kind of money and success that we're talking about on stage with the companies. But also, I think there are 3 main shifts at play in the way we need to start thinking about this. First of all, validation of commercial viability. That's something that the Defense Innovation Unit takes key. We do business with companies that are willing to deploy things at scale and at speed to the warfighter. We're no longer purely explorative or speculative. We have different programs in the Department of Defense that are focused towards that. And we've seen, and we need to see, proven business models emerge in these areas. So it's very important for companies that as soon as you see a DIU solicitation come out, it is simple to apply for the reason, and the reason that the window that we have open for applications is so short is because we expect their technology to be ready to be prototyped and ready to be deployed. Also, the second, strategic partnerships. Successful ventures increasingly leverage consortium funding and cross-sector partnerships. And I see that firsthand at DIU. We take a lot of our signals for where we go into the market from venture capital and from the way money is moving within the industry. And third, back to the idealist side, I think there is something to be learned from there, and it's storytelling and vision. And most importantly, investors today aren't just funding tech for the sake of funding tech. They're investing in compelling visions for the future, and I think Australia is doing that better than a lot of our allies right now, and making the case for space to be an important part of this economy. So in this panel, I'm excited to share some examples of what we've been working on at DIU, what we look forward to. We've seen the confidence of the new administration be on full display with the recent passing of the reconciliation budget, and DIU has been very well served in it, and we hope that we'll be seeing a lot of that come into the public and provide opportunities for our allies in Australia to increase the numbers of the portfolio companies I'm able to speak to hopefully next year when I come back. Thank you for having me, and look forward to the conversation.
Before you come back to your seat, can you share with us how much you have invested in Australian company?
I would love to. Something really good about the way that we operate as well, the way that we publicize who we work with is completely up to the companies. So I cannot speak to how much money we are well, we also don't technically invest in companies. We procure services, which is, I think, the way to foment an economy and a market. We don't just give you free money to help build infrastructure. I want to buy a product or a service from you. Yeah, the companies that are working with us, it's up to them to say publicly.
Thank you. Good answer. Last but not least, we have Guy. Over to you.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me. So mostly what I'm going to talk today about is the NRF. I think that's what Aude suggested would be most helpful. So the NRF is Australia's sovereign investor in industrial capability and capacity. So we are a $15 billion fund, and we invest in manufacturing businesses across 7 different sectors. So the 7 sectors helpfully spell the acronym REDTRAM. So the first R is for renewables, the second letter E is for enabling capabilities, D is for defense, T is for transport, R is for value add in resources, A is for value add in agriculture, and lastly, M is for medical science. So space fits within the enabling capabilities priority area, and we're very excited about the opportunities to invest in space businesses. So we, within our mandate was set by the government, and within our mandate, we can invest in both equity and we can provide loans, so we provide debt. We are aiming to build a balanced portfolio, and so across equity and debt, we invest in a range of different stages of equity, from early all the way through to listed, And within debt, it could be anything from very early venture debt all the way through to very mature senior secured loans. So that gives us, if you think about that as the 7 priority areas along the top, and all the forms of debt and equity down the x-axis, a very big matrix in which we're investing in, which is fantastic. It's very exciting for us, and I personally feel enormously privileged to have the opportunity to invest in businesses like Ben's. We are an investor in Myriota, and I'm certainly hopeful that I meet others today, and I've already had a couple of conversations that are really interesting, and I hope that they'll continue onwards. So whilst we are a government fund, we operate independently. So our mandate was set by the government, but we have a board that makes independent decisions. So I don't work for the government, I work for the NRF. And that's an important distinction to make, as is the fact that we don't provide grants. We are here to make a commercial return. And that commercial return should be fair based on the stage of equity we invest at or the debt that we're providing. And on top of the commercial return, we also have goals in terms of policy objectives. So those policy objectives cover a range of things. Importantly for today, it includes things like national security, it includes things like commercializing Australian innovation and technology, but it also includes, a range of other things: jobs in regional rural Australia, backing First Nations founders, backing female founders. All of those things are important to us alongside making a commercial return. So the types of businesses that we're interested in investing in fundamentally need to be in sectors or in areas of sectors where we think we have some sort of reason to win, some sort of reason to believe that we can win. So what's our comparative advantage in Australia? And so when you think about that from the space context, you might think about location and the fact that we can launch rockets locally, but that can both go into polar orbit as well as equatorial orbit. And you might think about other things. I mean, particularly interesting, the two businesses, the two founders that spoke earlier, they both have space, they're space enabled, but a lot of the technology and a lot of the capability that sits in the business is through things like sensors, through things like communications, through things like physical AI. Those are things that Australia is actually really, really good at. And so space may be the enabling area that actually allows us to leverage those other forms of comparative advantage that we have over other nations. And so that's the first thing I'd say, is we're definitely looking for areas where we do have comparative advantage. The second thing probably to build on that other panelists have already mentioned is that we really are looking for businesses where there is a customer. There's a need, there's a customer, and ideally we'd like to talk to those customers. And Ben and I certainly sat through a few conversations with some of his customers before we invested. And that sort of demonstrates that there is actually a business underneath what we're investing in. And it's not to say that the business necessarily has to be profitable yet, but we do want to see some sort of demonstration of product market fit and revenues flowing. Probably the next thing to mention about our mandate is that one of the things that we are here to do is to facilitate the flow of capital other than our own. And so that capital could be in the form of could be in the form of government grants, it could be in the form of VC capital from locally or overseas, or it could be in the form of some more strategic capital from bigger corporates. But our role is to be there early on, ideally, to help facilitate the flow of that capital so that larger rounds, particularly important for space businesses, can get raised. I'll probably leave it there for now. Obviously happy to answer any questions through the course of the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy, and I think that's a very important message you've heard there. NRF is open for space businesses, customers is the big key there. I have so many questions, and I'm looking at the clock, and I'm freaking out because I think I have to pick two. First thing I'll say is I think we know more or less that we have private investment around 8 billion a year across the world, and before it was really US, and now it's everyone, Europe and China as well, so there is a change there, and the level of investment is different. The thing we can't find any data on is return on investment. It's been 10 years we've invested in space. I'd like to know from the three of you if there is anything you can share about return on investment, because unless you are exiting to the next round and you're making money, I don't know if there is any figure or anything you could share. That's the first question. And to you two, I know that when I'm also raising money for some customers, I know there is always a question is, what is the long-term plan? I mean, you mentioned commitment, but often it's like, do you want to grow organically? Do you want to sell and be acquired? Or do you want to float on the market? These are the three general options. So let's start with the investor side and then your side on that question.
I'll take a stab at that, and I'm totally regretting saying I was going to paint with broad brushes. Because VC is essentially an idiosyncratic asset class, right? You're not really looking at what's happening thematically. Every company has very unique sets of risk, capabilities, advantages, disadvantages, path to market, investor market fit, product market fit. There's a lot that happens. We've, again, been fortunate or unfortunate to experience all of those in different degrees. So, like I said, we've had exits, some really surprising exits. We're always pleasantly surprised when some things happen early and they're not small. So we've been fortunate. We've had that experience, but we've also had zombies and stuff that's not made it, right? So I look at the ROI question as more really idiosyncratic. We're bottom-up investors. We get excited about an idea rather than saying the ROI for space is so-and-so. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Omar or Guy?
Yeah, I think we're in a unique moment and industry because particularly the government and the US government, in many cases, is the sole customer. And that is such a responsibility. For example, if you were a business that relied on US Department of State, USAID as a customer as of recent, you're not in a good place right now, right? So I say that because unfortunately dealing with governments isn't always the easiest thing, and things, can change on a dime. So as the customer end and as the government, we need to be extremely careful in the way that we message our requirements, what are we looking for in the market, and doing so with commitment, right? We don't want any free chicken from anybody. We want to be able to come to the industry with a request for a product or service and money being behind it. And that's something that a lot of the folks at DIU try to message to companies a lot is, as much as we talk on stage about maybe a technology that we're looking forward to acquiring in the next couple of years, that doesn't mean I need you to go in your back room and start spending your own money to make it. Wait until I pay you to do that, right? And to the ROI question, we've done some back of the envelope calculations. Do not quote me, but I'm very confident in saying that for every DIU dollar that goes to a company, by the way, we see lots of companies that after they win a DIU solicitation or similar in the DoD, they do a capital raise. We're able to leverage $1 DIU dollar to 40 VC dollars. That is an incredible return for the government, right? I don't want to go buy an iPhone from a US department. I want to go get it from Apple, right? And I want that to be the same thing going on in space, right? So there's so much there, the ROI for us has been extremely clear. That's why, like I mentioned, we have a tremendous vote of confidence from Congress and the President in the amount of dollars that they've given to us.
Thank you. That's
Aude, if I may add one quick thing to what Omar just said, I think what's really interesting for us as VC investors is, again, that signal is really important. And I think credit where credit's due, like most VC investors will tell you governments are not great customers. However, there's a lot of it that's changing, right? Like the way government procures today is very different from when it did in the past, and that's something to absolutely be excited about, and we absolutely are. One of the great examples would be how contracts are steering away from cost plus sort of commercials, which is absolutely exciting, and that sort of makes it really easy from an investment case perspective to then back those startups that are going that pathway. So thank you for everything you do.
Cade, do you want to add anything, especially about the ROI that we can find on the guidelines of the NRF?
Sure. So I don't have an ROI story to tell yet. We're a year and a bit in. I'm really looking forward to a few years down the track coming back on stage with Ben and talking about an ROI. That said, across our portfolio as a whole, we're looking for 2 to 3% above the Australian bond rate. But it's probably worth just emphasizing that a lot of that will come through debt returns, not through equity returns. And so the way that we think about returns that we're looking for is for it to reflect the risk that we're taking. That's no different to any other investor. But yeah, I don't have a number in mind specifically. I think about it more as a stage-based thing rather than a sector-based thing. So the earlier the investment, obviously, the greater the return you're looking for.
Thank you. Flavia, Ben?
Well, the problem with being an entrepreneur is I'm already thinking about the next thing, so you have to repeat the question again.
I was asking, as a startup, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years' time? Because usually that's what investors are asking. What is your exit strategy? Do you want to be IPO? Do you want to be acquired? Or do you want to grow?
Okay. Well, first thing I would say is the team's already loading up a couple of containers. Omar, very much look forward to selling DIU dollars and then going back to Guy for a 40x raise. But in serious, so the last business actually, which was a cyber security and IoT business that I was lucky enough to found and sell, which was sold on the 28th of February 2020. So timing is important. The plan was to take the kids out of school and go around the world and travel, but like everybody else, we didn't get past the backyard. But I got a call actually from a friend of mine, serial sort of entrepreneur, lived in the Valley for a long period of time, Australian, and he said, well, why don't you come to Australia and help, scale our Australian business? So I think what drives us all is different, but for me I have a mission to help build a global impact business that is Australian, and that's a very powerful thing that drives me. As to the exit, we're not looking to exit, but yes, of course, liquidity in the form of public offering, of course, that would be excellent at the right time. And I think that is one of the areas that is an advantage here in Australia. Some countries not so much, which is, our financials are private, right? And so we can grow and we can develop without introspection from competitors and otherwise, right? You see, my timing sometimes sucks as well, travel aside. When I joined Myriota, the heyday of raising money in space easy definitely had slammed shut. So there is a time, there's a bubble. Now you have to have something. You have to have something real, right? I think that, I'm sure, is shared by other entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Flavia.
To add to what Ben said, the big bubble to connect all the three discussions, the big bubble happened around the COVID time. There was a lot of SPACs in our industry, in the space industry. So SPACs are a crazy form of IPO listing, in which I would say around 15 space startup listed, and half of them completely slammed. Unfortunately, many of them had no revenue or little revenue. So that was a big problem for space startup land, because that was the first 10 years of return of investment, as you ask, and didn't go as good. So some companies did well, like I think Rocket Lab is still going strong, but many others had to delist, or they're not doing well in terms of market cap. So for us founders, that was a really interesting moment, because it was 10 years, 15 years in from ROI, and it wasn't that good. So it wasn't just a bubble, it was also COVID and decision of many founders that is impacting us now in capital raise. now we're going on the other side, so you know the things are coming. It does not go without saying that one of the most successful one is SpaceX, and SpaceX didn't have an exit yet. Okay, not even Starlink had an exit yet. Is the space company that is changing the world. So I think it created such an enormous pool for everything else, because everyone now looks around and say which one is the next big SpaceX. Because don't forget, you can see a market cap, you can see a ROI, but how many of space companies got $1 billion revenue? That's what I'm interested about. Okay, you can count them on one hand. Potentially just SpaceX, I would say. So we are really at the beginning of this transformation. This is the first things I really want to say. The second things that I want to say, is answer to what you just mentioned. Investors, they usually invest in space startup, space-enabled startup, you call it as you call it, like people put things in space. They don't really want you to have an exit. Like if you mention an exit, they're not going to invest in you. They know that space is a long, very complex journey, and they want to be the type of funder sticking it. Like, I really hope Fleet is going to be a 100 years company. I hope it's going to surpass me. Now, I agree with Ben that eventually we need to do liquidity. I was having this conversation just in the 4 year before. Fleet raised capital with big VCs in Australia that their fund is about to finish. So eventually we'll need to give these funds liquidity. In Australia, funds, if you're lucky, they last 10 years. So within 10 years, these investors need to have to return. So eventually you need to come out with something. Either you have secondaries, or you raise money with PEs, or you go in IPO. That could be something that you could do or not do. The reality is that business like ours, 10 years in, you will see something happen in the next 3 years. For a business 10 years in, you will see something happen in the next couple of years.
Yep, and I think I'd secondly build on that. If you're looking at raising right now and you're in an A, B sort of phase, and your investors or potential investors are asking you very seriously, what's your exit plan in the next 3 to 5 years? I would find different investors, because that is not going to happen.
Not the people that are going to support you through a space journey, for sure. Okay. The other important things that I want to mention to finish the discussion that we had before, it's very, very, very difficult, and Joe was saying the same. It's changing, but it's very difficult to convince 90% of the VC out there if your only customers is defense or the government. It's almost impossible to raise money if that's your situation. And not because VC don't trust the government of defense, it's a practicality, is that the lead time of contracts are too long and too unpredictable. So investors invest in a business model that shows that you can get a customers, give you money with a certain period of time, and your revenue is predictable. Unfortunately, government and defense are not predictable. So it is what it is. Like, I think they're great customers, because they're customer, once you have them, they're with you forever, but they don't give you that predictability. And it's influenced by the world. So when Fleet raised money in December, we raised $800 million valuation. Amazing. It's $200 million away from being a unicorn, so $1 billion valuation. So that $200 million got discounted. So the defense revenue that I had got discounted. So I had defense revenue on top of my exploration revenue from mining companies. They would rather count on BHP, on Rio Tinto, and these guys to pay their bills than the next defense contract. So I got that revenue discounted from my valuation, okay? So if I could say something to every single founder around the world, particularly when we are not in US, okay? Well, maybe even to the people in US, defense and government should not be your first customer, should not be the customers you count on, shouldn't be the case. And another important thing that I really have to say is, if your business model is, as I call it, the blind leading the blinds, okay? So you're a space startup that is serving a space startup, you better go home, okay? Because ain't no money in that. There is never gonna happen. So if you build subsystem for a startup that builds CubeSat, you better go home. This is never gonna happen. So we need to change a little bit the way we see business models, because you know, at the end of the day, you don't forget that SpaceX built rockets, and that system, the business model, is serving his own business model, that is Starlink, that is serving people. Okay? So, what do you think, Ben?
I have a slightly different view on the defense, but I think if you're doing defense, that should be your deliberate design, not it's one of many. And I think you see companies like Anduril that have clearly built successful businesses.
Yeah, I agree.
But again, you know, we're talking about one out of many, many attempts, so I agree with a lot. I think the other side, I talk about this to the team quite often, is fearlessness. We have to tip ourselves into the abyss, we have to step in. We are not like, there are too many companies out here that like, oh, that's a little bit scary, let's fall back to some government grants and a little bit contract, and maybe we'll downsize to 25 people and we'll live forever. I don't want to live forever. If we're going to do something, we're going to do it. We might die, right? Guy doesn't like to hear that, but that is.
Yeah, they're not going to die. They're going to just be fine.
But I think that bravery is important. And I'm going to turn this around because this is something that I think is an ingrained challenge in Australia, which is, what do you think of one of your zombie founders? Are you going to go invest in them second time around?
Depends. Again, extremely idiosyncratic. I'll first sort of circle back on that defense point. I think, at least as generalist investors, we've actually invested in both SpaceX and Anduril. So the key differentiator in terms of when we do think that defense or government revenue is not something that we discount would be twofold. A, we've sort of looked into what your depth of capital looks like for the next 2, 3, or 4 rounds. We do that math right after the first meeting we've had with you, right? So we have to look at, do you have the ability to raise, do you have the network, et cetera, all of those good things to be able to sustain those kind of sales cycles. And secondly, do you have the ability or a grasp of what that sales cycle is like, because that sales cycle is brutal.
It is brutal.
So
it absolutely is.
I'd like to add a few things on the defense thing, if I may. And Guy, I know you had a point. First of all, if you do space, you're doing defense as well. You want it or not, space is dual use. Point number 1. Point number 2, I agree with you. Don't do only space, do an adjacent industry. I think we've seen that across the world. I'm a bit more positive than you, Flavia. Bryce Technology have just released a landscape of the investment. Private investment is constant on space, it doesn't go down. Yes, 2021 with a SPAC was a big surge, not only on space, across all the different panels, so everybody went through that SPAC thing. So there is more and more investors, there are more and more investors looking into setting up in Australia, which is a very good, and looking at every stage, A, B, C, D, also, I don't think there is a definition of that. The Series A is for AI looking for $2 billion is different to someone looking for $5 million, so I even don't know if these stages are really relevant anymore, but yeah, adjacent, not only having government. Having said that, I would like the last question to be around this, how government and private funding can work together, because putting back my government hat on, I believe that even if government should not be the only customer, it should be one of anchor customer. Again, to Sue's point before, space helps to solve a lot of problems that government needs to solve, and this is something Australia was trying to do, and I hope we're going to do it again. I think government is also there to invest in this, I don't know if you call it valley of death or anything else, but helping this TRL uplift where nobody wants to invest because it's super hard. I think that's the role of government to be there and give some guidelines on the signal. And to your point, Omar, the $1 to 40, sometimes for a government just to say space is important, and I'm making a big call here, and I can be on records, for a government to say just space is important without putting any money behind it makes a big difference. All the companies who had the space agency logo on their on the roadmaps or formal roadmaps that are still to be published, I hope they'll be released today, made a big difference, and there was no money behind this. So I really hope that this is the education we're talking about is gonna happen at some point. So that was my big spiel. You wanted to say something, Guy?
Yeah.
And also, sorry, at the end, if you want to talk about this private versus government, and we have 3 minutes left, so if we can.
Okay, I'll keep it quick then. So the first thing I wanted to say was, if the first thing or one of the main things that a founder comes in and talks to an investor about is an exit, I think most investors are running for the door. Fundamentally, we're interested, I think, in backing businesses that are going to create value, that are going to become meaningful businesses. And so the concept of an exit is something that happens after you create value. If you create value, a liquidity event of some sort will take place. Now, the second question, how the interaction of government and private capital. So I think, as I mentioned, sort of at the core of our mandate, I really hope we can get to 1 in 40, but we haven't yet got to 1 in 40. But we are definitely trying to facilitate the flow of capital that comes in alongside us. We are not the only form of government capital, obviously, and Ben, maybe you might want to talk about some of the grants that you've got along the way. So grants obviously are also a form of government capital, but where they're non-dilutive, it's very helpful alongside VC capital for there to be non-dilutive capital for obvious reasons, not just because of the extra capital involved, but also because they often lead to very tangible value propositions. That what gets built using the grant money can then lead to further capital raises later because you demonstrate some sort of customer proposition, and that's as important as the capital because it enables you to go again.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, this has been fantastic, and just want to close by making a couple comments on that question. To that 40 to 1 number, I think it's a little bit more, but you need to realize the kind of money we work with, particularly in Silicon Valley. Some of these funds and companies operate with cash that is larger than the GDPs of entire countries, and we play to that. Right? It was a realization that we came to quite late as the U.S. government, but we realized that we can't keep building stuff on our own. Our adversaries that are trying to hurt us and our allies are moving at speed, and we need to be able to not just catch up, but leave them behind so far that we're going to impose such a cost on them, if they were to even think of doing something, that they won't do it. So that is like the first thing that we are in charge of doing at the Department of Defense, is deterring our adversary. We are in the business of saving lives and killing bad guys. And that is the ROI for us. It's so hard to put numbers behind it, but we're really proud to be able to put the 40 to 1 number on it. And we want that to be the case here in Australia as well, because we're seeing awesome talent and awesome companies come out of here. And I hope to, like I said, be able to bring a litany of a long list of companies we're doing business this year in the future. And I'm very confident that by this time next year, we'll have a lot more to be talking about.
Thanks, Omar. To Joe's point earlier on, if you can help us educate our government as well on how space is important, that will help us.
I'm loud about it. It's important.
Joe.
I would say from a space versus defense perspective, build and they would come works in defense, not so much in space. So I think if you are building in space, think about, again, first principles business. It's great to have validation from whether they're early grants or whether they are government supported programs or portfolios like NRF, or you have customers like the DIU. You've done extremely well. We sort of see that as a point of validation. No fundraising round is filled by one investor, so always understand that it is a team sport, and you have to have the ability to both rally private and public capital to achieve whatever it is that you're looking to achieve as a milestone in that round.
Thank you. Flavia, last point, super quick.
Last point, super quick, is that we should be really proud of what's been happening in Australia in the past 5 years with startup guys, and not just the two of us, the one that you meet in the foyer, in the room. There is a lot of things happening, a lot of funders that have hanging there for many, many years that are going on the other side of the bridge. It's not enough though, okay? I just want to say to everyone that it's not okay what the government is doing in the past couple of years, putting space on a back burner. It is not okay. But I also want to tell you that all the VCs in this country and in US, they gonna fund a business that is well thought. They don't care if the government is not supportive. They will get the money to give to you, founder, because they are keen, okay? So my investors are keen to invest in space startups, okay? So let's just build good businesses. Let's just think about business models. Let's just think about customers. Let's just think about sustainability. And let's just support these founders because there are lots of money out there. It's not true they are not there. There's a lot of money out there. What is missing is thinking a bit better our business model of these founders. Most of them, I help founders with their business model and their presentation on a daily basis because it's something I'm very passionate about. And we're pretty bad. Okay, most of founders are engineers or PhD. They have no idea about business, okay? So get the business people to help them, and we can go really far.
Thank you, Flavia. Ben?
All right, minus 2 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. So, look, the capital now exists at different stages, right? There's been companies with maybe scars on the back that have got there. If you've got that belief and passion, I think you should tip yourself into the void and try and make it happen. And as Flavia said, like part of our job, like as founders, is like we will happily spend time with you. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Say, hey, can you spend 15 minutes? Give us some guidance. We will do that, right? Reach out. We're there. And good luck.
Thank you. Omar has one last thing. I wish we had half an hour more because you guys surely have questions, but the lunch is after that. You know where to find them. Omar.
I'm trying to get, there we go. Yeah, one last thing. I've taken enough 15-hour flights that I've read a lot of books on this. So if you want to pull out your phones or write something down, I have a couple recommendations for the audience to take away. Unit X is an incredible story of how the DoD has reinvented itself and how DIU emerged and the awesome stuff that we're doing. Escaping Gravity by Laura Garver is an awesome account of how NASA reinvented itself and how we came to have SpaceX the way it is today. Re-Entry and Liftoff by Eric Berger are also amazing books. And then Space to Grow from the Harvard Business School by Brendan Rosso and Matthew Weinzierl are awesome case studies in those books that describe companies that have both been successful in space and those that have failed.
I concur. Thank you for being there for the extra 4 minutes. There is one question we didn't ask, why space was different to fund and was it more difficult to raise, but I think everybody answered the question. As long as you have a problem to solve and a business model, being space is anecdotal at the end of the day, and I think that's what we all heard. I thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for all the panelists. Again, I wish we had more time because it's a very interesting subject. So join me to thank the panel and take your question at lunch.